Hello, my dear ones. This is Maria, and I want to thank you for stopping by Golden Life Stories. Before I begin, I just want to remind you, if you love stories about life, betrayal, forgiveness, and the unexpected turns our hearts can take, please make sure to subscribe, click like, and turn on the little bell. Sometimes, a single story can open our eyes and maybe even heal our hearts. Now, let me tell you about the night everything in my life changed. I was 47 when it happened, a quiet night when the world felt still. My husband, David, was sleeping beside me. We had been married for 22 years. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were happy enough. I met David when I was 25. He was charming, funny, and had a way of making every room feel lighter. We built a simple life together. A small house, one beautiful daughter, Emma, who had just left for college, and a rhythm that felt safe. But that night, safety left our home. It started so innocently. I woke up around 2:30 in the morning to get a drink of water. The moonlight came through the curtains, and I smiled for a moment at how peaceful David looked. His hair had begun to turn silver, and he was breathing deeply. Then I heard it, a whisper, a name, barely audible, but sharp enough to cut through the stillness of the room. Sophie, he said it again. Sophie. No, don't go. My heart stopped. Sophie. My best friend for nearly 15 years. The same Sophie who stood beside me when I gave birth. The same Sophie who came over every Sunday with her laughter and her banana bread. The same Sophie who called me sis. For a second, I told myself I was dreaming. Maybe I misheard him. Maybe he said something else. But no. The second time, he said it with pain, like a plea. Sophie, please, stay. I felt a cold shiver run through me. I sat up quietly, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. My husband, my partner of 2 decades, was whispering my best friend's name in his sleep. I didn't wake him. I couldn't. Instead, I lay back down and stared at the ceiling until morning light crept into the room. David woke up like nothing had happened. He stretched, kissed my forehead, and asked if I wanted coffee. I forced a smile. Sure, I said, pretending everything was normal. But inside, something had cracked. That morning, I went about my chores like a ghost in my own home. I made breakfast, folded laundry, watered the plants, but my mind kept replaying his whisper. Why Sophie? Why her name? What could it mean? By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Sophie. She answered in her usual cheerful tone. Hey, love! What's up? My mouth went dry. I wanted to ask her outright, but instead, I said, nothing much, just checking on you. We talked for a few minutes, about her new job, her dog, her weekend plans. Everything sounded normal. Too normal, but now I noticed every pause, every hesitation, every tone I had never cared about before. When I hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. I told myself, Maria, you're overreacting. It was just a dream. Don't ruin your peace over nothing. But peace doesn't come easily when doubt moves into your heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there pretending to read while David scrolled through his phone beside me. At one point, I glanced at his screen. He was smiling faintly. When I leaned over, he quickly turned it off. Late night emails, he said. I nodded, pretending not to notice the nervous flicker in his eyes. Something wasn't right. Days passed, and I became a detective in my own marriage. I started noticing small things. How often he texted, how quickly he changed screens, how he suddenly started wearing cologne again before work. And Sophie, she began canceling plans. Sorry, Maria, I'm so busy this week, she'd say. Or, maybe next time, love. Things are hectic. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. These were the 2 people I trusted most. But trust, once cracked, never sounds the same again. One Friday night, David came home later than usual. His shirt smelled faintly of perfume. Not mine. He said he'd had a late meeting. I asked what he'd eaten for dinner. He hesitated, then said, just a sandwich. Strange, because Sophie had told me earlier she'd made homemade lasagna that night. Coincidence, right? That's what I told myself. But when I went to bed that night, I wasn't the same woman anymore. I lay there, pretending to sleep, and once again I heard him whisper, softly, longingly, Sophie, This time, my eyes filled with tears. He wasn't dreaming anymore, he was living a lie, and I was the only one still pretending to be asleep. That was the night I knew something was terribly wrong. But I didn't know yet that this was only the beginning, because what I discovered next would not only break my heart, but change my entire understanding of love, loyalty, and self-worth. If you're still here listening to my story, thank you, my dears. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you believe every truth, no matter how painful, deserves to be told. The next morning, I woke up with a strange kind of calmness, the kind that only comes when you've cried enough in silence. I decided I wouldn't ask David anything. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed to know the truth before I confronted either of them. I made him breakfast as usual. Eggs, toast, and coffee. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're too good to me, Maria." I smiled back, but inside, I whispered, "I hope I still am." He left for work and I stood by the kitchen window, watching his car disappear down the road. I had never felt so alone in that house. The ticking clock seemed louder than ever. I cleaned the house, not because it needed cleaning, but because I didn't know what else to do. Every dish I washed, every floor I swept, I replayed his whisper in my mind, "Sophie, please, stay." What did it mean? Was it a dream? A memory? A secret? By the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I picked up his laptop. He rarely let me use it, saying it was for work. But that day, I opened it. The password was our wedding date. I smiled bitterly. It was almost insulting how simple it was. At first, I found nothing. Work files, reports, some bank statements. But when I checked the mail, I found a hidden folder labeled personal. Inside were messages, hundreds of them. Most were harmless jokes and short talks with colleagues. But one name caught my eye, Sophie. My hand trembled as I opened the thread. The first few messages were normal, casual, friendly. But as I scrolled down, my stomach turned cold. Her messages were playful. His replies were longer than they should be. They talked about dinners, little secrets, inside jokes. And then, one message stopped my breath. From David, "Last night felt different. I can't stop thinking about you." And Sophie's reply, "Please, David, we promised not to talk about it here." My eyes blurred with tears. I felt like the floor had disappeared under me. My best friend, my husband, together. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it, but there it was, plain, undeniable. I closed the laptop slowly and sat there in silence. The clock ticked, my heart pounded, but I didn't move. After a while, I called Sophie. My voice shook, but I tried to sound normal. "Hey, love," I said, "hear you free this evening?" There was a long pause before she answered. Tonight. I think I'm busy. Maybe tomorrow." My heart clenched. She had never turned me down before. "Of course," I said softly. "Tomorrow then." I hung up and sat quietly, thinking. Every time she said she was busy, I wondered if she was busy with him. That night I couldn't eat. I just waited. When David came home, I watched him closely. He was humming, in a good mood. Too good. "Long day?" I asked. He smiled. "Yeah, but it was fine." We had a small team dinner after work. I nodded, staring at him. Was Sophie there? He looked surprised. "Sophie? No, why would she be?" I just smiled. Just wondering. He didn't look at me for the rest of the evening. When he went to shower, I picked up his phone. He had changed the password. My heart sank. The next day, I decided I wouldn't wait anymore. I called Emma, my daughter. She was studying in another city, full of life and innocence. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked. I smiled weakly. "Yes." "Sweetheart, just missing you. Are you and Dad okay?" The question hit me hard. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything, but I couldn't break her heart like mine was breaking. "We're fine, honey," I said. "Just a little tired, that's all." After the call, I sat by the window again. I realized I couldn't live like this, waiting, doubting, hurting. I needed to know the truth completely. The next weekend, David told me he was going on a business trip for 2 days. My instinct screamed. After he left, I called Sophie. "Hey, love," I said sweetly. "How are you? Are you in town this weekend? She hesitated. No, actually I'll be out for a couple of days. Visiting my cousin. Her voice trembled slightly. She wasn't a good liar. I thanked her and hung up. Then I made my decision. David had mentioned the name of his hotel once before, on another business trip. I checked the same place online. There were vacancies. Without thinking twice, I packed a small bag, booked a room, and drove there. When I arrived, I asked at the front desk, pretending to be his wife who wanted to surprise him. The receptionist smiled and confirmed his booking. Mr. David Wilson, room 212, she said. My heart raced. Thank you, I whispered. I went upstairs slowly, my legs heavy as stone. When I reached the room, I could hear laughter inside. A woman's laughter. Her laughter. I knocked once, softly. The sound inside stopped. Who is it? David's voice asked, tense. It's me, Maria. A long silence. Then slowly the door opened. He stood there, eyes wide, color drained from his face. Behind him, Sophie sat on the edge of the bed, frozen. None of us spoke. The air between us was heavy, thick with shame and truth. I looked at both of them, tears burning in my eyes. So it's true, I whispered. Sophie stood up, reaching out. Maria, I can explain. I stepped back. Don't. There's nothing left to explain. David tried to speak, but I raised my hand. I trusted you both. You were my family, and you destroyed everything for what? A secret you couldn't even keep. They stood there, speechless, guilt written all over their faces. I turned around and walked away. My steps were slow, but my heart felt like it was breaking into pieces. I didn't look back. I couldn't. That night, I drove back home alone. The road lights blurred through my tears. I didn't know where life would take me next, but one thing was certain, I would never be the same woman again. When I reached home, I sat in the dark, staring at the wedding photo on the wall. We looked so happy then. I touched the frame gently and whispered, goodbye. But it wasn't the end. What happened next surprised even me. Because the truth about their affair was only part of the story. There was something deeper. Something I didn't see coming. For the next few days I lived in silence. The house that once felt warm now echoed with emptiness. Every corner held a memory, and every memory hurt. I replayed everything in my mind. His smiles, her laughter, our dinners together. I had loved them both deeply, and now they had both betrayed me. But one thing about pain, it can either break you or build you. And I decided it wouldn't break me. On the third morning, I woke up early and made myself coffee. For the first time in years, I sat down and just thought. I asked myself what I wanted from my life, from this situation. I could scream, cry, curse the world, or I could stand up and face it with dignity. I chose the second. I called David that afternoon. He didn't answer. So, I sent him a message. Come home tonight. We need to talk. He replied an hour later. I'll be there. That evening, he walked in quietly, without his usual confidence. His eyes were heavy, his face pale. I could tell he hadn't slept. He sat down at the table where we had shared hundreds of meals together. Now it felt like a courtroom. I spoke first. I know everything, David. I saw the messages. I went to the hotel. He closed his eyes and sighed. Maria, I interrupted. I don't want excuses. I just want to understand why. He looked at me, guilt written across his face. It just happened. Maria. We didn't plan it. We were close friends for years, and one night we crossed a line. I laughed bitterly. One night. It wasn't just one night, was it? You've been lying to me for months. He stayed silent. That silence was louder than any confession. I continued, my voice trembling but firm. You know what hurts the most, David? It's not just that you cheated. It's who you cheated with. The woman who held my hand through everything. The woman who was like a sister to me. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. She told me, I said quietly. When I saw her at the hotel, she couldn't even look at me. You both destroyed something that took years to build. Maria, I'm sorry, he said finally. I made a mistake. I don't love her. It's over. I stared at him. You say it's over, But the moment you spoke her name in your sleep, it began. And when you looked at me and lied, that's when our marriage ended. He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled back. Don't. I don't know who you are anymore. He stood up slowly. What do you want me to do? I took a deep breath. Leave. For now, just leave. He hesitated, then nodded. He picked up his keys, walked to the door, and left without another word. The sound of the door closing was like a full stop at the end of a long, painful sentence. That night, I sat alone in my room. I thought about Sophie. Part of me wanted to call her and scream, but I didn't. She already knew what she had done, and I wasn't going to waste more of my soul on her. The next morning, I got a message from Sophie. Maria, please. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need to see you. Just once? I ignored it. For 3 days, she kept trying. Messages, calls, even showing up at my gate. I didn't open the door. But on the 4th day, I finally agreed. Not because I wanted to forgive her, but because I needed closure. We met at a small cafe, the same one where we used to share coffee every Friday. When she walked in, she looked nothing like the confident Sophie I knew. Her eyes were swollen, her voice shaky. Maria, she whispered, sitting across from me. I don't even know where to start. Start with the truth, I said calmly. She took a deep breath. It started when you were in the hospital last year. Remember when you had that surgery? I visited often, and so did David. We talked a lot. He was lonely, I was lonely. One night we crossed a line. I told him it was wrong. But we kept meeting. It was never about love, Maria. It was a mistake that turned into a trap. I listened quietly. My heart ached, but I didn't cry. I had no tears left. She continued. He told me he'd never leave you. I knew he loved you, and I hated myself every day for what I was doing. But I didn't know how to stop. I looked at her for a long time. Do you realize what you took from me? Not just my husband. You took my faith in people, my belief in friendship. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. And I'll live with that guilt forever. I stood up. I hope you do, Sophie. Because that's the only justice left for me. I walked away without looking back. When I got home, I sat by Emma's old piano and touched the keys gently. I hadn't played in years. That night I played again. The music was soft, filled with pain but also strength. In that moment, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about setting yourself free. So I wrote a letter, not to David, not to Sophie, to myself. Dear Maria, you've been betrayed, yes, but you're still standing. You still have your kindness, your strength, your heart. Don't let this break you. Let it remind you of who you are. I folded the letter and kept it in my diary. A week later, David came back. He looked thinner, older. He asked if we could talk. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said softly. I just want to say thank you. For everything. You didn't deserve any of this. I nodded. You're right. I didn't. He hesitated. Do you want me to move my things out? Yes, I said simply. It's time. He nodded again, his eyes full of regret, and left for good. It hurt watching him go, but it also felt like the first breath after drowning. That night I cooked dinner for myself, lit a candle, and sat at the table alone. But not lonely. For the first time, the silence felt peaceful. I knew healing wouldn't happen overnight, but I had taken the first step. I didn't need David or Sophie to make me whole again. I just needed me. And as I sat there, I whispered to myself, this isn't the end of my story. It's just a new beginning. But life, as always, had one more surprise waiting. Because 2 weeks later, I received something that changed everything again. A letter that revealed the truth neither David nor Sophie had ever told me. 2 weeks had passed since David left the house for good. Each day felt a little lighter, a little quieter. I started going for morning walks, cooking just for myself, and even smiling at the small things again. The smell of coffee, the sound of birds outside the window, the simple peace that comes from silence after a storm. I thought I had finally closed that chapter of my life. But one morning, while checking the mail, I saw an envelope with no sender's name. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the handwriting. It was Sophie's. For a moment I thought about throwing it away. I didn't want to reopen old wounds. But curiosity, no closure, made me open it. Inside there was a single page. It began simply, "Maria, please read this to the end. You deserve the truth." I sat down, my hands trembling slightly as I continued reading. "I know you hate me, and you should. What I did was unforgivable. But there's something you don't know, something David didn't have the courage to tell you. I'm writing this because I can't carry the guilt anymore. The truth is, the affair wasn't the full story." I frowned, my mind spinning. What else could there possibly be? When we started seeing each other, it wasn't out of passion. It began because David was helping me. I was diagnosed with cancer a year ago, breast cancer. I didn't tell anyone, not even you. I was terrified. I made him promise not to say a word. He helped me through my treatment, drove me to appointments, and made sure I wasn't alone. My breath caught in my chest. I could hardly believe what I was reading. That night at the hotel wasn't what you think. I wasn't there to be with him in that way. I was sick again, and I had no one to turn to. He came to help me check into the hospital, but I didn't have the strength to go. We stayed in that room so I could rest. That was the night you found us. Tears blurred my vision. Yes, we crossed a line before. I won't deny it. But by then, it was over. He loved you, Maria. I know that doesn't make what we did right. But you should know he wasn't betraying you that night. He was helping a dying woman. I dropped the letter, my heart racing, my mind spinning between anger, confusion, and sorrow. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. Could it be true? Was he really helping her? I thought of David's face when he opened the hotel door, shocked, pale, almost desperate. Maybe it wasn't guilt alone. Maybe it was fear. That evening, I called the hospital listed on the letterhead. I didn't know what I expected to hear, but I asked, "Is there a patient named Sophie Miller?" The nurse on the line paused before saying softly, "I'm sorry, ma'am. She passed away 3 days ago." I went silent. I thanked her and hung up slowly. Then I just sat there in the quiet. She was gone. My best friend. The woman who had betrayed me, and the woman who had once been like my sister. That night, I cried again. Not the same kind of tears as before. These were different. They were for everything that was lost, for what could have been, for what I didn't know. The next day, I called David. He answered after a long pause. "Maria?" "She's gone," I said quietly. There was silence on the line. Then, in a broken voice, he whispered, "I know." "So it was true?" I asked. "You were helping her." "Wes," he said. "I should have told you. I was afraid you'd think it was another lie. I never wanted you to find out like that." "Then why didn't you tell me about her illness?" He sighed. "Because she made me promise. She didn't want anyone to see her weak, especially you. She loved you, Maria. Even after everything, she did." His voice cracked at the end, and for the first time I heard pain. Not guilt, not shame, but real pain. After a long silence, I said, "David, I can't forget what you both did, but I can forgive what I understand." He didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, "That's more than I deserve." We ended the call without anger, without blame, just quiet acceptance. I sat there, staring out the window, thinking about everything that had happened. Sometimes people hurt each other, not because they stop loving, but because they don't know how to love the right way. I thought about Sophie's laughter, her warmth, her friendship. I remembered the good before the bad. I decided that was how I would keep her in my heart, not as the woman who betrayed me, but as the friend who lost her way and paid the ultimate price. Weeks passed. I visited her grave. It was simple, covered with white lilies. I placed a single rose and whispered, "Rest now, Sophie. I forgive you." As I walked away, I felt a strange lightness, like a heavy stone had finally lifted from my chest. When I got home, I took out the letter I had written to myself, the one about healing. I read it again and added a final line at the bottom. "Sometimes, the truth doesn't heal you instantly. It just helps you understand why you had to break first. I folded it back into my diary and smiled faintly. Life went on. David and I never got back together, but we spoke occasionally. Time turned us from husband and wife into something else. Two people who once shared love, pain, and a story that changed them both. Emma came home from college for the holidays, full of joy and laughter. She didn't know the full story, and maybe she never needed to. Some truths belong only to those who lived them. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, she looked at me and said, "Mom, you seem stronger lately." I smiled. Because I finally learned that strength isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. She hugged me tightly, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that betrayal doesn't always mean the end. It can be the beginning of something new. Sometimes it's how we find ourselves again. And so, my dear listeners, if you've ever been broken, betrayed, or left behind, remember this pain may change you, but it doesn't have to destroy you. Let it teach you. Let it make you softer, wiser, kinder. Because even the deepest scars can become the most beautiful stories. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If my story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little light in their darkness.